Yeah, they should be able to.
So the next department budgets that we're looking at are ones that we've previously approved, but there are new approved numbers from the selectmen. So it's coming back to us to determine if we want to adjust our recommendation.
These are revised DLR, right? The ones that put out here.
Yes.
These are the ones where the board voted the other night.
Right, so but these are the revised numbers.
For just the board side, yes.
Yeah.
Did not change the budget committee side.
Right.
And the recreation one, the grounds and maintenance one at the end, just shows you that they agreed with your number and you don't have to do anything with that.
Right. Okay. And are you representing these or? Yeah, I mean,
No.
you, the collective.
Yeah, collectively.
So just to clarify, the budget number is what we've already approved and then they wanted changes, is that correct? Okay.
So just before Laura gets into explaining the numbers and everything else, just to give you a little bit of on things like that. So we dropped the original numbers that were approved to the Board of Selectmen after we had gone through the process. And I think they had a little bit of sticker shock by the increase and the percentage. So we had marching orders at the end of the meeting to cut the operating budget by 200,000. Laura and I was tasked with going back and trying to find areas to cut that. With that said, I just wanted you to know going into this, the cuts that we made. We got creative with how we could fund things. Pulled some things out and we were able to fund them out of surplus this year. So that the big thing we focused on is not impacting. We had a department head meeting and got a sense of from the department heads how they were proceeding and what they were trying to basically accomplish this year moving forward. Some were new personnel, some projects, contracts, new equipment, different priorities. And what we did is we worked around those priorities and found areas that pull things out of the operating budget, either non-essential at this juncture, or that we would find an alternative way of funding it instead of out of the operating budget. We were successful in doing that, and the board went along with that. And we pulled some things out and put them into separate warrant articles to accomplish the same thing in a large lump sum increase. So we were still able to stay with the intent of the original proposals that you guys were presenting, how we made cuts. So now the number side of thing, I'll let Laura explain all that.
Yeah, so I guess if as we talk through it, if you can help us understand like kind of what's going to be covered in surplus and what would be a separate warrant article, it would definitely help me kind of absorb it, I guess. Yeah, we'll start with fire department.
So, so the fire department, we pulled out the vehicle lease line. So what we did is we pulled that out. That was a lease payment for engine 4, the pumper truck. That was an existing lease. I believe it was a 7-year lease or 10-year lease, excuse me. And what we did with that was we pulled it out, put it in a separate warrant article with a proposal to pay the truck off. The reason we wanted to do that is one, it pulls the $64,000 payment out of the operating budget, but the other thing is it's going to save almost $50,000 in interest. So by paying it off, and we also propose that we pay it off through the unassigned fund balance with the monies that we have in there, because it'll be a one-time payoff and it won't affect the operating budget as we move forward.
So is that by the unassigned fund balance, that means it's a net no impact?
No tax impact. There'll be no money raised through set taxation. And right now, though we can't give you an accurate number on what we're gonna have surplus this year, going into the last meeting with the operating budget, we percentage-wise, we should have only been right around 7.5% for the rest of the year. Again, we have other end of the year bills coming in and stuff, but just to give you an idea, we had 16.6%. So we had double where And there was some benefit buyouts and some other things at the end of the year, that were a little bit higher ticket items, but we're still gonna be healthy as far as it's concerned. It's the only thing out of the fire department.
Discussion on that?
Sensible.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we update our budget. Is that the wording to
You're
use?
just basically gonna re-vote on the new number,
Yeah, okay,
or whatever number that.
The selectmen.
right. I make a motion, we approve the fire department budget of 994, 586.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next one is the operating budget. We spoke a little bit about this when we met last meeting. We had mentioned that we had already cut some money out by within the Parks and Rec department. We had pulled money out of benefit buyout. I'm sorry, not benefit buyout.
We're on highway department.
I was
correct?
gonna say, are we on operating or highway?
What was I looking at? Oh, I saw operating budget at the top and I thought we were in the admin section. I apologize. So going into highway department, what we were able to do, again, we did a similar situation under the vehicle lease purchase line. It was 78,750 in there. That was for three separate pieces of equipment. One of which was the backhoe, which was an existing lease, only had 2 payments left. Pulled the backhoe out. We're actually paying that off through surplus this year. The whole payout was roughly $34,000 for 2 years payments. Plus we saved all the interest for those 2 years, which off the top of my head was roughly right around $7,000 in interest. So that left us the remaining 2 other pieces of equipment that he had in there. One was an excavator and one was a backhoe. They were getting substantial money with the trade-in from the existing equipment that highway had. So we pulled those out. Those were going to be new leases. So we put them into separate warrant articles and again, funded them through the unassigned fund balance as a one-time purchase.
And I feel like when we reviewed this, there was lease funding, but also a CIP item to purchase. And maybe I'm remembering that wrong, but I
They
thought,
have- I mean,
thought
they
we
had
had it here
CIP
just in case.
They
the
had CIP allocation to an equipment fund that they do every year. But the actual new leases for these 2 were put into the operating budget because they have a lease purchase line. Highway department budget, so they had operating budget. But we pulled them out separately into warrant articles.
Okay.
To be funded by the fund balance. And the backhoe was funded out of this year's surplus.
Okay. And that was like the only line updated for highway.
Yep.
Discussion there.
Nope.
I'll make a motion to approve the updated highway department number at $1,323,901.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Water department?
With the water department, what we did is there was 2 projects that were allocated in the operating budget. One was the cleaning of Mark well and the other was hydro testing. That was, like I said, 2 projects that were planned for this year. One was 15,2 and the other one was 9,000. 15,950 and 9,000, which one came out of 203 and the other one came out
183.
Contracted services, and what we did was we pulled those two projects out and funded them this year. So we funded them through surplus this year in our budget, so that the water department's budget, was reduced.
I don't know if I have the latest ones.
They should have been on the table.
Yeah, they are, but I don't have, what was the date?
Okay. They should be dated 12/16.
I don't think I have it, but I'll just make notes. The last ones that I have, everything that was on the table was November.
I had a chunk that was people put that was. A chunk.
That's right, I'll just make notes and then worry about it after. I'll just update my numbers.
Any discussion on this one?
Water department's the only one that funds itself, so it really
Right.
doesn't.
I'll make a motion. We approve the water department budget for $520,072.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Patriotic purposes.
So on the patriotic line, what we did is we pulled out the two fireworks. Fireworks displays. We had some money left in that line this year because of the COVID we did for 4th of July. But also we had some surplus, so we paid the Atlas fireworks contracts out of this year's operating budget.
So the intent's not to eliminate the fireworks, it's just
No,
funded from,
It's just funded from surplus this year, so that we're.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the patriotic purposes as amended at the is it $1,191?
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Benefits.
Benefits. So, as I started to say, on the wrong budget, we had originally cut some money out before we had come to the last meeting. But additionally, when we went back and looked at it, the board discovered that because we weren't able to fill some of our open positions, and we talked about the problem with hiring right now with some of these positions, well, those premiums that we had originally budgeted for were not utilized last year, so we were able to pull $70,000 out of Halton Dental, 833, and bring it in and pay the first month's premiums of this new insurance plan. So that just reduced that line by 70 grand.
So there's another way of saying that we paid it out of surplus because we didn't spend it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Just want to make sure I was following.
And that's because of the employees that we don't have right now. There's extra money in the surplus from the employees that we would be paying if we had them. I'll make a motion to accept the benefits as written for $2,195,578.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great job finding ways to reduce this. Thank you. All right, moving on to the Halton School budget. Thank you.
Can do your meeting real quick. Just finish talking.
Do your meeting.
Oh, okay, yeah, good idea. So Dave had mentioned when we set Thursdays as our meeting date that, like starting in January, Thursdays don't work for him. So just wondering if, another day of the week will work for folks, and I'll obviously have to check with Leanne outside of this, but wondering if like Tuesdays or Wednesdays.
Wednesdays I have stuff at my job, so
Okay,
but Tuesdays is usually my open.
okay,
I have no objections with Tuesdays. That's fine.
how do Tuesdays work? for you?
Tuesdays will work for me except for the one Tuesday a month is the school board meeting, but
Okay, all right, so I'll check with Leanne, and then I'll have to check with Stacy on making sure that we
And
have.
some of them, if it's snowing out real hard or something, I'm not gonna be here.
Okay.
Just so everybody.
All right, great, thanks. So we'll shoot for Tuesdays then, and we'll make sure Stacy gets the confirmation out to everybody. Thank you. Welcome back.
Thanks. Sorry.
So at our last meeting, Tim gave us the overview of the budget, and we all went away to study it a little bit and come back with any questions that we have. So we will, I guess, open it up to the questions unless there's anything you want to share before we
I
begin.
have a few things for you, but if you want to attend to the budget, and then I can give you these. I do have a draft of what the school board is considering for warrant articles. You want me to hand them around now or wait till we?
Yeah,
Sure, yeah.
Operating
you can
budget.
hand them around.
The board is going to act. The board will act on these to the extent that they exist, and you'll see what that means on January 4th.
I think I have one already. Is it this?
yeah, I got you.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh,
And the reason I say to the extent that they exist is because two of the first, after the budget itself, the next two potential items are CBAs that are under negotiation currently, so we'll see. And then the others are pending, just pending school board action on those.
So I do have some questions on the budget itself.
Of course.
I guess starting with the categories, right? So I have to look at my own notes here. So transportation, special education, 27, 22. Looks like it's down quite a bit. Just wondering if there's a key driver there.
Sorry, Ruben. What was your question?
So I'm on the summary page.
Yep.
And 27, 22, the transportation, special education. Looks like it's down like 25%.
Yep.
62,000. Just wondering if that's
I'm
driven by anything in particular.
I'm flipping to the detail page, but I can tell you what that line carries is transportation of students to out of district placements. So a student with a higher level of need than we can serve in the local schools will be placed out of district. And if it's not residential, you pay one way or the other. If it's residential, it's much more expensive per year. If it's not residential, there's transportation involved. So typically that would reflect a student either graduating and no longer requiring the services or no longer being in the placement. Moving out of town.
Yep.
There are a lot of reasons.
And then the 2,900 unemployment, did that just get moved to a different bucket? Is that why that's zeroed out?
What I did is spread it out throughout the functions.
Okay.
It's still there.
Right. Thank you.
You may hear that from us for a couple of years that we've moved to something because everyone who does this has preferences about how to do it.
And then I guess just out of curiosity on the trusts, there's, I'm on the next page. There's a technology trust. I assume it's technology. It's actually technology.
Supposed
on
to
the
be,
page.
yeah.
Is that like, does that have a specific purpose or is that
Yeah.
general?
I can repeat the purpose because I heard it. The board first set this up 2 years ago. Or maybe last year was the first year.
Last
There was
year.
an article for it. And it is to hold funds in reserve in case the district needs to recover from a like a ransom attack or a security breach. So the board had both Superintendent Stiles, who was in Alton last year, and me at the high school do a little bit of research to get an idea what those kinds of things can cost, what our exposure is, and then decided to try to do 3 rounds of funding. There's one here, there's also one at the high school to get up to $90,000, try to do $30,000 a year for 3 years, and then hold that essentially as insurance.
Got it. Thank you. My next question's on page 17. Does anybody have anything before that? And that question is on the technical support. It looks like it's gone up pretty significantly. Is there a program related change there or?
Yes. Grabbing one of my other binders because I actually have this answer written down. We've had to answer this already. So you'll see that there was an actual, if you go over to the left, everyone's on page 17, this is the top line. It used to be in the 40s. And then the budget that was adopted for this year was dramatically cut. And now the proposal is to go back close to what it was previously. The cut was based on a plan to hire an employee who could perform these services in-house. So last year, the superintendent and the director of technology looked for that employee and couldn't find one. So this is to go back to outsourcing services that would have been brought in.
So was that planned higher in the budget last year? And should we expect to see a decrease this year accordingly?
Good question. The employee doesn't exist at the school.
Right.
Whether or not they had budgeted for it is an interesting question. Do you know, Heidi? Top of your head? Can we get that for you? We'll talk to technology
Yeah,
director.
I mean, I guess maybe asking the question a different way. Are you confident that this budget does not include funding for that position? So we're not double counting, I guess.
Right.
My next question's on 19. Anybody have anything for that? Software expense looks like it's going up. I know on the high school budget, we talked about some like 3-year renewals. I don't know if this is similar or.
Yeah, so again, I'll ask Mr. Baloo to what extent this relates to. They were anticipating having somebody on site who could do some of these things, but the increase in networks, servers, and support, that's a 20,000. Am I looking at an old version or does this still say that, Heidi? Network servers and support. Yeah, sorry.
I thought this had something to do with, and I could be mistaken, but the security protection on the kids with the Google
Content.
Chromes.
Rebecca's right. So content, the firewall content filter at 8240
Yeah, I see that.
is new.
It's so the kids can't get on these.
On the,
It
on
alerts
sites,
the school right away if these kids are on, because they had trouble with that last year, so. This way it alerts the school and.
So there are two lines that relate to content filtering. One is the firewall, which is for on-site content filtering. And the other one, if you go down to securely Chromebook
that's it.
filter at
Yeah.
7432, that's increased. And that's for the off-site filtering that Rebecca's talking about when the kids are at home with their Chromebooks, but we're still filtering content. So the increases come from a combination of those two lines.
Great.
And we have more kids with Chromebooks than there used to be since the pandemic.
right.
Great, thank you. And then some pretty significant drops on the next page in equipment and computer replacements. Is that cyclical or?
Yeah, so this district used, I think I mentioned before that a lot of the ESSER grant money had already been budgeted, even encumbered in some cases before we got here in July, and we moved, the district moved ahead on some of its technology. There's an obvious question though that comes behind that, which is when they need to be replaced, is there going to be a big spike? So it's definitely one of the things we need to get a handle on, is how we're going to spread the impact of replacements over time. It's nice. Grants are a double-edged sword.
Right.
It's right. They're great the first time when you get them.
So I guess a general question on the, where there's the account number, it's like 1.01 and then others are 1.03. Is 01 central and 03 the high school?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
3'd be the high school.
That's one of those preference items, by the way. That's not how we do the other elementary school budget. We're debating it.
I think I saw like a duplicate line and I'm like, the only difference is that number. So that was what led me to assume that.
So if I can have 30 seconds on that. I think I lean toward the other way of doing it, because right now we're in the 1140s, but as you go through these functions, you're looking at both elementary and high school costs together. If you did it a different way, you could get to a point in the budget on page 40 something or 50 something where you had seen all of the elementary school costs and then got an elementary school total. And then could see high school cost next.
Right.
It's a little trickier to separate the two. We can do it,
Right.
but it takes some time and gives me a headache.
Well, I think it just confuses it as it goes through both of them at the same time, instead of separating the two schools from,
And
which nothing against you, but I think that's kind of why it's like that.
yeah,
That's interesting, because we do it the other way at
Right.
the other elementary school.
Right.
And I think it makes all the sense in the world, because we can say the elementary school budget is up or down this much, but the high school cost has changed, and the high school cost changes based on enrollment, not just the
Right.
budget. So there are two moving pieces that affect the high school. So it might be cleaner to really
Yeah.
talk about them separately.
so the line items in here are those portions of the high school budget that are specific to Alton, right? Because then you have that one line that represents kind of the shared cost. So I think,
It's 51.33%
Right.
of what's in each of those lines in what the high school calls. Well, never mind.
but I think like, because there's a line on, back on that first page that summarizes everything. There's the one line that says Prospect Mountain High School, right? That's the 51 or whatever percent.
Yes.
The detail lines that we're seeing in here are the ones that we own 100% of that because it's a cost not related to that. Because it's like transportation and things like that. And
Right, transportation is entirely, right.
yeah,
But even there, so Ruben, now that means that when we look at elementary school costs versus high school cost, all the transportation's in the elementary school cost.
right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So I kind of like the way that you said the other schools doing it, because you truly are looking at that. So page 24. The tuition private source, again, there's two lines, one for each school. This is just student driven, right? We just
Special
have
education tuition, the
more
1200 function, everything in the 1200s is related to special education.
But the changes in the amount are just related to students.
Yep.
In the
A student, a new student, newly placed, moving into the district, change in placement.
Page 23. Jump in, guys, if you have anything.
I've seen this a few times, so I'll let you.
So I think it's just an open question on trying to find it in here. Like ESY, like what does that stand for?
Extended school learning, extended school year.
Extended school year.
Okay.
So some students in their IEPs, this is why it's in the, well, it's the 1205, but it's in a special ed line, is because it's driven by IEPs, individual education plans for special needs students. So an extended year service in the summer is part of some of those plans.
Got it. On page 28, let me just read my notes here. Advisors, if I look at the actual for 2020, 2021, it's 740. Then it looks like last year's budget was higher. This year's budget's even higher. Wondering what drives that expense, I guess.
So are you talking the increase?
Yeah, it looks like it's like after school enrichment salaries and then salaries and benefits for ELT.
Is that extended learning teachers?
This is for the after school
Mhm.
activities. And this is this year ELT for 3 people is expensive. I think what they did past year was they used a grant to pay.
You too, Ryan.
We're going to see you again. We are going to see you again. Aren't we? Yeah. Let's learn a little more about that. You think it used to be grant funded? And that's why we're seeing it here?
It was.
It was. Okay.
And I think that's why it's increased. But we can definitely get.
Yeah, let's check with Shay and Johnny.
On page 32, it looks like our, trying to find it before I speak to it. Athletic salaries went up.
Yep, this is an increase requested by administration, decided by the board to propose. This is to, in the past, the coaches of what are considered A teams were paid $200 more each season than the coaches of B teams. A and B just meaning the kids who exhibit higher skill are on the A team. And it's really, I think the rationale was it's the same amount of work. It's, so this is to pay everyone the same. A coach is paid $1,500 for a season of work at the middle school. And is the AD's stipend an increase here? It's the same. Okay. So that's all changes in coaches' stipends.
Got it. Okay. I think this is probably just one of those moving things from one bucket to another, but on page 59, the business office and other. Like 135,000 higher. I'm guessing that's because we're here from somewhere else.
Yeah, we're the shared cost, we're doing the shared services, so it's kind of for Alton in this budget, it's considered a contracted service, not a salary. So it's the salary lines, if you noticed all the decreases.
The principal's office lines above on the previous page, is that?
Yeah, it's not the,
Correlation.
yeah, the 2510s, you'll see all those
Yeah.
decreases.
Yeah.
Right,
Sorry.
that
Yeah.
basically is being put into the line, the contracted service line.
Got it.
The bottom line on the 2510s with all those reductions and the increase, if you go to page 60, the total net, the bottom line for 2510 is down $125.
Right.
So it's almost a wash.
Okay. And last one I had was on page 67, just the equipment replacement. It looks like it's gone down, or I guess almost zeroed out. Is that again back to taking advantage of some of the grants? Or?
So what that was,
The equipment replacement for building and maintenance.
yeah, it was 86,000 for this year.
Yeah, he had some projects scheduled for this year, but he doesn't have any projects for next year or in it for FY23. Did ask him.
There's some talk about an automation project to eliminate pneumatic controls from the environmental systems and go with computerized controls. That would be a phased thing over time. It's in the CIP that we are developing, and the board has some funds. You know, if it wanted to get a jump on the first year, it could use. But we just did a big a 2 boiler replacement over the summer. I think, you know, with a transition in leadership and all at the end of COVID, but that's what we thought it was. We're just looking to get out of this year alive.
Fair enough. Yeah, those are the only questions that I had. Sounds like there's a couple of things that you'll get back to us with. Anybody have any other questions on this budget?
Very thorough.
I brought a couple of other things for you when you're interested.
Yeah.
I referred to rising per pupil cost and what that can mean last time. So that sparked a little bit of a question about, so what are our per pupil costs? So here's what's available through the way DOE does it. And what I just want to talk about for a second is what that means. So we deal with budgets, but the department calculates per pupil cost based on actual spending. So right there's going to be a difference because at the end of the year, school systems have surplus. At the end of last year, this SAU had really substantial surplus. I mean, Rebecca, $800,000
Last year?
at the end of last
Yes,
year.
something
Yeah, like
very high.
huge surplus.
Yeah.
But again, that goes back to those ESSER grants being
Right.
used.
And some of
right?
that would have to do with COVID, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, and that's why, because the ESSER money was COVID money.
Right.
That was used in some cases to plan the budget, thinking taxpayers need the relief.
Right.
So that was sort of atypical, that's a lot of surplus. But nevertheless, it's going to affect these numbers. So we talk about a budget, but then DOE looks at actual. That also means there's a huge lag time. So the most recent data we're looking at here is 1920. And that's because school systems get audited. Our fiscal year ends on June 30th. Auditors come in August,
The end of
hopefully,
August.
and finish their work by the end of September.
Working on it still.
And then there's a little back and forth. So by the time the Department of Education and Revenue have audited records, for the previous fiscal year, it's winter. By the time they track down every issue with every school system in the state, it's winter. Then they take their time and they don't just use, here's how much money we spent. You see, I've got a couple of notes here. They subtract out of district tuition for special education students. They subtract transportation. They set aside food service, right? Losses or revenue, which further reduces, schools have spent that money, but it doesn't end up getting reported in our per pupil cost according to the Department of Education. So they take the second half of the year to do all that. And then maybe when in the spring, do you even know, Heidi, will they give us the FY 21 number?
I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be late in fiscal 22 when we get the fiscal 21 number from the Department of Ed. So I like trying to predict things like that, but the challenge is everything I just said, right? Predicting how much surplus will there be? You have to back that out and then subtract transportation and subtract, like a lot of it can be done and it's interesting, but you need to have some time on your hands. But the second sheet there gives you what their report looks like when it comes out. And I just printed the first page because we're on it. They list every school in the state or every district in the state alphabetically. You'll notice we don't have a high school per pupil cost like others do. And it's because of the way the JMA is blended into these budgets.
So it would probably be its own line. It would be its own line in here, like Prospect Mountain High School, or does it just not show up at all?
Prospect doesn't get one.
Oh.
Yeah, we have to. So, which sort of goes back to why, to me, it's important to do the work and figure it out and make the predictions, because otherwise we don't get it. It's a little bit unfair. Now that I'm the superintendent here, I'll say it. It's a little bit unfair to SAU 72 to carry what's possibly an inflated cost because of expenses that SAU 72 can't control directly, right? There's some control, but it's shared control. But this other thing that I wanted you to have is just a follow-up on the conversation we had about what the board is talking to the Milton School Board about. I shared this with the school board in their last open meeting and with the staff at the school this week. Because if this conversation is going to move forward, it's going to move forward quickly.
Right.
So not communicating about this would be a big mistake. People need to know what's possible and why it may make sense, whether ultimately the community decides it does. At least information's got to be out there. So I think we already talked about the enrollment history, right? Last time we were together. We talked about why, the slide about why could this be considered a problem are all things we talked about
Right.
here a couple of weeks ago. There are some approximate projections, what I think per pupil cost, right? The blue on the per pupil cost for Alton Central School on this chart here is what you have on this other sheet. The red is, my best guess. At the high school, my best guesses go out farther into the future because it's easier to predict enrollment in a high school.
So if, let's say something does work out with Milton.
Yep.
And we get the enrollment goes up, these numbers are going to change significantly as the enrollment goes up in the.
Yep. And the budget would change too, but not proportionally.
Yeah, right. I was just gonna say.
Yeah. So the per pupil cost would absolutely go down.
But
Probably by a
the
lot.
average would stay the same because more students would be coming in to make up the difference.
Yeah, the overall effect would be to reduce the per pupil cost and to reduce taxes,
Right.
because the amount after revenue coming in, the amount left to be assessed to both towns would be reduced.
To be reduced, right.
So this is just a summary. We're making it public. Just if this moves forward and becomes more of a conversation, it's just, I think, going to be important that people aren't totally blindsided by it. There are a couple of charts here that show what the enrollment at the schools could look like if there were agreements in place.
Are you good with this, Ruben?
If it gets serious, it'll get serious, and there's going to be a lot to talk about.
Right.
But
We're not there yet.
you might be there the next time we talk.
Right.
The way this might
Yeah.
go, it could be like, hey, remember last week when this wasn't that big a deal? Now we need a construction bond.
Yes.
They laugh, but we're not
Right,
kidding.
that's not
No.
a joke.
It's not a joke.
Good that they laughed, though.
Yeah.
I only laugh because I know.
Some rooms you get thrown out of for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it does make sense from the long-term perspective.
It would be cost neutral to Alton.
Right.
Whatever happened at the,
Right.
I have it, it's written down in here.
I just,
It's a condition.
yeah,
To me, to the board, it's a condition, right? The revenue to Alton Central School would have to offset any additional expenses, whether it's bond payments, operating costs, all of it, anything. It just doesn't make sense otherwise.
Right.
I mean, you're on both sides of this, so is that looking like something that they're interested in? Yeah, I got
How
you.
many people do you
Never
know
mind,
who
I
live in
won't-
Milton?
I'm not, yeah. Not gonna-
If you know 6, I bet 3 of them think it's a good idea, and 3 of them don't.
Fair enough.
And if it does move forward for them, it would be on, like, it would be, they'd vote
It's-
on it this year.
It's a really, well, yes. So there are contingencies on top of contingencies, but yes.
A lot of variables.
They would vote. So Milton School Board has a meeting next Wednesday, the 22nd. And I think it's not their last chance, but I think their intention would be to decide that night whether or not the Milton School Board will put an article on their warrant, one or two, to authorize them to enter into these tuition agreements, which also means closing Newt Middle High School. If the Milton School Board doesn't vote to do that, there could still be one or two warrant articles that say that in Milton, they could be brought other ways.
Right.
By petition, for example. So, yeah.
Lots of moving parts.
Okay, so I think the sequencing on the warrant articles is they get voted on by the boards before they come to us, right? And
Yes.
so it feels like if we have you back after the 4th, then we can finalize the operating budget as well as talk about the warrant articles.
Last year, you had a public hearing on the school budgets on the 13th, I think.
I didn't join
On
until
the
March. so-
school warrant articles? Yeah, I think you're right in there, yeah.
It's right in there.
I think we could.
Because we'll see these first, well, I mean, we'll vote on these first before they come to you, I believe. Warrant articles.
Can't remember. I thought it was like one open,
It might be.
yeah. I can find out what that process is.
The SB2 process.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's sitting right on one of the desks at the SAU. They'll act on the 4th.
Right,
We have to meet a deadline by the 7th.
by the 7th.
So we'll do that on that Tuesday. There will be a meeting of the joint board. So the high school will act, and then we're going to post a meeting of the Alton board the same night in the same location. So hopefully the first one doesn't take too long and we can do the second one and courts can get all that done.
Perfect.
But this, I mean, these are the items. So at least
Right, they're
you
in
have
front of
that. You can, you know,
Right.
the one capital item there, to put money in the building and grounds fund, it would be for equipment for the cafeteria. I guess you've been hearing about this cafeteria plan now for a couple of years. They did a first phase renovation where they expanded the size of the cafeteria, not necessarily last year, maybe the year before, right before COVID or going into COVID. So this is the second part, which is equipment. And then the third part is finishing the renovation. We're in the process of developing a new capital plan because the capital plan we got was a single page and we're doing this a little bit more elaborate.
Anything,
Oh, I'm good.
no, any other questions? Comments?
Thank you.
Awesome.
Anytime.
A lot of work
Thank
you
you.
guys got to do.
So the second week in January, is that what that means for us together,
Seems likely.
public?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, we're,
If you need anything in the meantime, of course, just call us.
yeah, I'll reach out, I guess to finalize the
See you next week anyway.
scheduling. Right,
Yeah.
yeah. Good point. All right, we'll move on to old business. Of the meeting minutes for the 4th. I'll make a motion to,
Go ahead, I'm sorry, I was cutting you off there.
I'll make a motion to approve the budget committee meetings from November 4th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we don't have the December 2nd one, so we'll work to do that in the next
We have to
meeting.
table those.
Any other business? Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You. Everybody have a good Christmas.
Yes,
Guys,
you as
too.
well.
Can't believe it's here already, but it is.
Yeah.
Snow on Saturday, they're saying. Aren't you excited?
4 to 8 inches tomorrow.
Oh, Saturday into Sunday.
That's what my wife just texted me.
I think it's, unless they moved it, I thought it was Saturday into
Well, I
Sunday.
think they were talking about something coming up in tomorrow and another one on Saturday if it
Oh, really?
landed correctly with the planets aligned.
Oh, it won't, they never.
There's gonna be snow because my wife's never wrong, so.
Smart man.
Notice he said that before I turned the recording on.
Just in case she's watching.
Here's the one you approved tonight. No, I'm not here tomorrow.
Are you leaving with us though?
No, you guys got